The Ark of the Covenant. To the modern world, it's a Hollywood MacGuffin, a prop from a Spielberg set. But to the ancients, it was a golden furnace of divine presence that demanded blood and gold in equal measure. This wasn't just a box. It was a localized vortex of power that flattened cities, incinerated priests, and turned the tide of empires with a terrifying, rhythmic patience. History paints it in two conflicting colors: the shimmering light of a sacred relic and the cold, physical shadow of a superweapon. Then, in 587 BCE, as the Babylonian engines of war hammered at the gates of Jerusalem, the ultimate miracle occurred. The most holiest object in existence simply vanished. It didn't just leave the temple, it slipped into the silence of history, leaving behind a hole in the earth that still echoes like a scream. If the ark was truly just a chest of wood and metal, why did the world hold its breath when it disappeared? Today we go back to the foot of Sinai, where history ceased to be a series of days and became a collision with the absolute. You are about to walk into the Holy of Holies. But tell me, what cost do you think a man pays for hearing the voice that broke the earth? This was not a peaceful gathering. The biblical record describes a mountain that groaned under the weight of the descending divine. Imagine the terror of the Israelites, escaped slaves, still smelling of Egyptian mud, watching the summit dissolve into a furnace of black smoke and unnatural white lightning. The earth did not just tremble, it shudders in the memory. Out of that suffocating cloud came a voice like the grinding of tectonic plates. Moses ascended, vanishing into the vapor for 40 days and 40 nights, leaving behind the world of the living. What he witnessed there was more than a lecture on morality. It was the drafting of a blood pact. When he finally emerged, he carried 2 slabs of stone etched with laws that could bind a nation or break a world. But a pact of such volatility could not be left out in the open. A God who physically occupies space requires a physical anchor. The words of Sinai were a fire, and that fire needed a furnace. To hold this voice, a predator's cage of acacia and gold was forged with the cold, surgical precision of an architect designing a weapon. The blueprint was obsessive, 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide. These are not the vague metaphors of a poet, but the technical specifications of a witness who stood close enough to the gold to see his own distorted reflection. The core was acacia, a dense, knotted wood of the desert, resilient enough to survive the blistering heat of the Sinai. This humble wood was suffocated in splendor, overlaid with pure gold inside and out. It was a sensory paradox, the organic skeleton of a tree entombed in the eternal, unyielding skin of a metal that never tarnishes. This technical precision finds a haunting echo in the physical world. In 1922, when Howard Carter breached the darkness of Tutankhamun's tomb, he found himself staring at a gilded funerary shrine, an ornate chest carried on poles, adorned with protective figures that mirrored the biblical cherubim. The Israelites, fresh from their exodus, were utilizing the highest technology of the age. Around the ark's rim, a molding of gold ran like a crown, while 4 rings of solid gold held long poles that were never to be removed. The ark was designed to be untouchable. To bridge the gap between the box and the bearer was to invite an electrical surge of the sacred that no human frame could withstand. The true terror lay upon the lid, the mercy seat. This was a solid slab of gold from which 2 cherubim rose, their wings stretched upward, shadowing the vacuum between them. This was a throne for an invisible king, a localized vortex of power. But as the hammers fell and the gold was polished to a blinding glare, one question hung in the smoke. Why was a place named for mercy built to be the most dangerous place on earth. To house this celestial fire, they raised the Tabernacle, a massive tent of woven goat hair and dyed skins. At its heart lay the Holy of Holies, a chamber of absolute isolation. Heavy curtains of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn hung as a final barrier between the mundane and the divine. This was the exclusion zone. No common hand could touch the fabric. Only Moses and Aaron were permitted to breach that threshold. Entering a sanctum where the gold reflected a light that didn't come from lamps. For the tabernacle was not built to welcome the world. It was built to protect the world from the raw, unshielded glare of the Almighty. When the unauthorized stepped into that glare, the results were clinical and catastrophic. In the book of Leviticus, Nadab and Abihu, priests of the elite, presented an unauthorized offering. The ark did not accept their devotion. It struck. Within a heartbeat, a torrent of divine fire erupted from the mercy seat. They were reduced to ash where they stood, gray dust on the sanctuary floor. Years later, a driver named Uzzah reached out his hand to steady the ark when the oxen stumbled. The moment his skin touched the gold, the ark discharged its lethal energy. Uzzah fell dead instantly. Even the town of Beth Shemesh, driven by curiosity to look inside, was met with an inferno that turned a village into a graveyard. Can a divine object be truly holy if it kills without mercy? Or was the ark simply a superweapon that knew no allies? The fire of the ark was not meant only for individual transgressors. It was a catalyst for conquest. Nowhere is a systematic destruction more evident than at the gates of Jericho. This was not a battle. It was a slow-motion execution of a city. For 6 days, a chilling silence hung over the valley. There were no war cries, only the steady, haunting pulse of sandals on sand. The Israelite army marched in a funeral procession, and at the center, carried on the shoulders of the priest, sat the golden predator. The 7th day broke the fever. 7 circuits, 7 priests, 7 trumpets of ram's horn. As the sun reached its zenith, the silence was shattered. It started as a low vibration, a hum that began in the wood of the ark and escalated into a sound so dense it seemed to displace the very air. The scream of the trumpets met the roar of the people, and the physical world simply gave up. The massive stone blocks disintegrated like dry leaves. The walls didn't just fall, they surrendered to a frequency from another realm. When the dust of the nomadic wars finally settled, the predator was given a cage of stone. King Solomon completed a house for the divine, a structure of cedar and marble. At its core, the ark was placed in a sensory vacuum, a perfect cube of absolute darkness. Gold-plated cherubim, their wings spanning 20 cubits, stretched across the chamber, their shadows lengthening like the fingers of a god claiming its territory. For centuries it sat in this silence, transitioning from a weapon of the open road to a captive son. The final heartbeat of the ark in the biblical record occurs in 621 BCE, during the reign of King Josiah, who ordered the Levites to return the chest to the temple. After that, the line goes flat. The shadows of the cherubim were about to be swallowed by a much larger darkness. In 587 BCE, the horizon of Jerusalem disappeared behind the dust clouds of the Neo-Babylonian legions. King Nebuchadnezzar II came to erase a kingdom. As the siege towers groaned and the battering rams splintered the gates, the God who once leveled Jericho with a shout remained hauntingly quiet. When the walls buckled, Babylonian soldiers surged into the sanctuary. History records a systematic looting with forensic precision. Silver basins, bronze pillars, and golden bowls were carted off as trophies. And yet the centerpiece, the very throne of the Creator, is missing from the ledger. When the smoke cleared, the ark was gone. It had vanished into the cracks of a collapsing world. Legend speaks of a desperate midnight operation. Before the first Babylonian torch touched the cedar beams, the prophet Jeremiah allegedly took the ark and spirited it into the Judean wilderness. He led his burden toward Mount Nebo, where he found a cave so deep it felt like a wound in the earth. He placed the gold within and sealed the entrance, leaving the warning that the location must remain unknown until the end of days. Centuries of explorers have since combed these canyons, finding only empty fissures and the bones of hermits. The desert does not yield its secrets, it swallows them. If the Judean desert holds nothing but wind, our gaze must shift south to the highlands of Ethiopia. In the ancient city of Axum, within the iron fences of the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, sits a small chapel. The Ethiopians tell of Menelik I, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who allegedly smuggled the true vessel into the heart of Africa. But a historian's skepticism is a cold blade. There is a single monk, the guardian, who is the only human permitted to lay eyes on the object. Scholars who claim to have seen it describe not a golden furnace, but a medieval stone tablet. Is this the real ark, or a sacred fiction forged to anchor a nation's soul? The most dangerous theory lies directly beneath the feet of the faithful, the Temple Mount. Historically, the ark went missing in the very place it was meant to be protected. In the 12th century, Maimonides suggested that Solomon constructed a labyrinth of secret vaults deep within the limestone guts of the mountain. In 1981, Rabbi Yehuda Getz followed the echoes, breaking through a sealed wall into a forgotten tunnel aligned with the Holy of Holies. For a few feverish hours, flashlight beams cut through millennia of dust. But as word leaked, a political firestorm ignited. The tunnel was filled with reinforced concrete, sealed forever. To dig beneath the dome of the rock is to tug at the loose thread of global peace. If the ark is there, its discovery would be a detonation. But there is a colder possibility. Perhaps the ark didn't vanish into a secret cave. Perhaps it died in the furnace of 587 BCE, melted down into an anonymous pool of gold to pay the salaries of Babylonian archers. While we dream of golden cherubim, the reality may be a forgotten entry in a ledger of scrap metal. Yet in this destruction, something more resilient was born. Before the siege, faith was anchored to a physical object, a box you could touch. When the gold was lost, the presence of God moved from a heavy chest of wood into the weightless, indestructible architecture of the holy text. The ark was a symbol that could be burnt. A book could be memorized and carried in the mind of a refugee. By losing their most sacred object, they gained a portable eternity. We are left staring into the hollow resonance of history. The ark remains a mirror for our hunger for power and our terror of the unknown, a vessel of radioactive holiness that demands everything and offers no compromise. It was a fire that consumed the curious and a weight that crushed the unwary. As we peer into the abyss of time, we must confront a transcendent dread. The object has long since transformed into a text, a memory that carries more weight than the gold ever did. The physical ark may be lost to the dust, but the scream it left in history continues to vibrate through the foundations of the world.